My daughter's heels clicked against the marble floor of the law office like a countdown. Tick, tick, tick. Each step rang louder than the last until she sat across from me at the long, polished table with her arms crossed and a smirk on her red-painted lips. Riley didn't say a word, but her eyes said plenty. You don't belong here. Old man. She didn't expect me to show up to the will reading. Neither did her husband, or the lawyer, but I did. And when they heard what was written, what my late ex-wife Catherine Marie Bennett left behind for me, the smugness melted off. Riley's face like wax from a candle held too close to flame. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The moment everything changed was buried in a single sentence. A sentence she never saw coming. And honestly, neither did I before. That day, I hadn't seen Riley in over 7 years. Not since she told me over brunch. No less that she was changing her last name to Ashwood, her husband's name, and that she didn't want to be associated with small-town names and small-time legacies. That was the last real conversation we had, until the funeral, and the letter. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in the comments from where are you watching this video. The last few years of my life had settled into a kind of quiet decay. I lived in a 2-bedroom rental outside of Missoula, Montana. My days were filled with crossword puzzles, cheap coffee, and long walks I pretended were for exercise but were really just an excuse to be somewhere else for a while. The morning Catherine died, I was refilling birdseed in the backyard. Feed her. She hadn't spoken to me in a decade. Not since the divorce. We hadn't fought. Not exactly. We just stopped being people to each other, became paperwork and missed calls and other people's holidays. Still, when the call came from a law firm in Bozeman, something in me paused. My hand hovered over the seed bag. A sparrow fluttered and flew away. Mr. Grayson Bennett? Yes. This is Maureen Carter, from Carter & Holmes LLP. I'm reaching out regarding the estate of Catherine Marie Bennett. I froze, not because I didn't expect it. Catherine had been sick for years, but because, even after all the silence, someone had said my name in connection with hers, like I still mattered. I'm very sorry for your loss, the woman said. You're listed as a named party in her last will and testament. We'd like to invite you to the reading. Friday, 11 a.m. There was a beat of silence. She listed me? Yes, sir. We'll explain everything at the office. That whole week felt like walking through fog in boots 2 sizes too big. I kept waiting to wake up in the middle of the night in our old house, her on one side of the bed, reading some mystery novel, me with the crossword. The room smelled like lavender and wood polish. That was before the guest rooms, the summer homes, and the trips to Aspen with people I never met. We weren't always broken. There was a time we'd been whole. Catherine wasn't born with money. She was born with vision and just enough fire to make people listen. We met in the break room of the community center downtown. I was repairing a busted vending machine. She was organizing an after-school program for single moms. I remember her hands. She had paint on them from building something with the kids' blue and green flecks under her nails, smudged across her cheek. But she still walked like someone who'd never known failure. Need help with that? She asked, eyeing the machine. Only if you know anything about sticking quarters and jammed rotors. I joked. I know people, she replied. People who kick things when they stop working. She made me laugh. That was rare back then. I was 29, tired of everything, and quietly waiting to not exist. She changed that. We married within a year, bought a fixer-upper in Lolo, just south of Missoula. Catherine repainted every room twice, said the first time always told her what she really wanted. She started her business out of our garage, Bennett & Co. Wasn't much at first, just her, a laptop, and a stubborn refusal to let people treat single moms like afterthoughts. By the time Riley turned 10, Catherine was hosting corporate retreats and TED Talks. She had assistants, shareholders, and high expectations, too high sometimes, especially for Riley, especially for me. I stayed where I was needed. I cooked. I picked Riley up from school. I fixed leaky sinks and grocery shopped on Wednesdays. Catherine's work demanded time zones, press, and partners. Mine demanded presence. But at some point, presence wasn't enough. She started correcting my sentences at parties. Introduce me as Grayson. He keeps the house running in that sweet tone people use for old pets or outdated tech. I didn't fight it. I figured she earned her pride, until she forgot to look at me altogether. Riley noticed. Children always notice what they're never told. By 15, she was mimicking her mother's tone. By 18, she was full of prep school polish and grand plans. I was the outdated reference book on a shelf to hide a reach. The day Catherine and I divorced, we didn't cry. We signed the documents at a granite conference table. She wore gray. I wore blue. She gave me the house. I gave her the life she'd always wanted. Riley didn't come home that summer. Said she had an internship. She never really came home after that. When I walked into the law office for the will reading, I carried nothing but my coat and a letter she'd written me 5 years before. Unsent. Found in a box of Christmas decorations. I wasn't supposed to keep. It began. Grayson, I never stopped watching the life we built. Even after I walked away from it, I wasn't sure why I brought it. Maybe to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined it all. The office smelled like lemons and old money. Riley sat near the head of the table. Her husband Owen beside her pinstripe suit. Slick hair, zero patience. They both looked up when I entered. No nod. No greeting. Just silence. The lawyer, a young man in a sharp navy suit, gestured politely. Mr. Bennett, glad you could join us. Please have a seat. The will was thick, bound. I expected a list of assets, cold words and colder cuts, but after 30 pages of trusts, transfers, and tax clauses, there was a single page labeled, to Grayson Bennett. The lawyer paused, then read it aloud. Riley's smirk returned, until he reached the line, and everything changed. The attic hadn't changed in 20 years. Dust coated every corner like the silence that had filled our relationship. Old wooden beams groaned under my feet as I stepped in, my flashlight landing on boxes marked in my mother's careful cursive. I found the one with my name on it last. Tears blurred my vision. It simply said, for Julia, when it's time. Inside were things I hadn't seen in decades: my ballet shoes, a broken locket I thought was lost, a stack of letters tied with a blue ribbon, and at the very bottom, a bound leather journal. The journal had her handwriting. But what broke me was the first line. I never stopped loving you, but I couldn't protect you. Please, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments from where are you watching this video. My breath caught. I sat down cross-legged and began to read. The journal unraveled years of secrets. How my mother had tried to shield me from the chaos of our broken family. How she'd begged my father to stop favoring Evan over me. How Dana had once told her to her face that I didn't belong. But the most shocking thing, she had tried to leave me something real. If Evan and Dana ever take over the house, I want you to know that not everything of mine is theirs to own. There was a line at the bottom. The will is not what they think it is. That night, I sat silently at the kitchen table while Evan and Dana laughed with friends in the living room, celebrating like they'd won a war. I felt invisible, until Dana turned to me with a grin laced in venom and said, "Don't stay up too late in our house." I smiled, but inside, something had shifted. The next morning, the reading of the will took place at our family lawyer's office. Mr. Hopkins, an old, kind-eyed man, looked worn, as if he already anticipated trouble. Evan sat confidently. Dana clutched his arm like a prize winner. I sat beside them, distant, unreadable. Mr. Hopkins opened the folder. This is the final legally filed will of the late Evelyn Barrett. It was signed and notarized 3 months ago. Dana smirked. She updated it to reflect reality. She whispered smugly. Hopkins raised an eyebrow. Indeed. And I must say, it surprised me too. He began reading. To my son, Evan, I leave you the collection of family heirlooms, and your father's vintage watch. You always cherished what was his more than mine. Dana straightened, as if waiting for her name. To Dana, you have never been my daughter, but I hope this house teaches you humility. I leave you the front porch swing and the garden tools you once said were pointless. Clutter, use them wisely. The room chilled. Dana's face went pale. What? That's it? Mr. Hopkins didn't flinch. He turned the page. To my daughter, Julia, I leave the house. All of it. Not because you need it, but because you were never given what you deserved in this family space. This is yours now. May it become your beginning, not your burden. Silence. Dana's mouth opened in shock. Evan stood up. That's a lie. She didn't even talk to Julia the last few years. Hopkins calmly handed him a signed video recording. It's all documented. Your mother made sure this time there would be no fire, no missing page, no mistake. Dana lunged at me. You manipulated her. She was weak. She was sick. This is elder abuse. Hopkins interrupted firmly. She was of sound mind. And if you'd like to challenge the will, We can go to court, but I'd advise against it. You might not like what's uncovered. Evan grabbed Dana's arm. We're not done with this, he hissed at me. I stood slowly. You already were. You just didn't know it. Later that evening, I stood on the front porch of the house. Mine now. The wind whispered through the old oak tree beside the porch, the same tree I used to climb when I was little and thought my mother never saw. I held the journal in one hand, the house keys in the other, for the first time. In years, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt chosen. But this story wasn't over yet, because beneath the final pages of the journal, taped inside a hidden pocket, was a single photograph of me. As a baby. In the arms of a woman who wasn't Evelyn. And on the back, in faded ink, it read, Your real beginning. Find the truth. The day after the will reading, I sat in the hallway of the house I once called home. Everything was different now. The portraits that once stared down with warmth now looked like cold spectators. My mother's chair was still there. Her knitting needles rested where she'd last left them. A half-finished sweater lay draped over the armrest. The same sweater she promised she'd complete for me before winter. She never got the chance. Why would she do this? Ashley's voice broke the silence as she entered from the kitchen. Why would Mom give it all to you, of all people? Her voice wasn't angry anymore. It was defeated, small. I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know either. Not entirely. Not until I found the second envelope. Please subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments from where are you watching this video. It was hidden in her room, tucked behind a photograph of me as a baby. The same one she kept by her bedside, even when I thought she hated me. Inside was a letter, handwritten shaky, dated just 6 weeks before her death. To my daughter Ellie, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. There are things a mother should never say out loud. Fears, failures, secrets. I carried them for too long. I stayed silent when your father hurt you with his absence. I watched you grow up without knowing the truth. But here is the truth finally. Your father didn't abandon you. He died in a car accident on the night of your 4th birthday. He was on his way home with a cake. I never told you. I blamed him for leaving. I hated him for dying. And somehow, that hatred grew and spilled over onto you. That was my sin. I thought if I could distance myself from the pain, I could survive it. I let Ashley believe she was the favorite. I didn't correct her when she called herself the heir, the golden one. But you were my breath, my shadow. You reminded me too much of him. I'm so sorry for every silent birthday, every misgraduation, every hug I didn't give. I left everything to you, not to make amends but to finally say, you mattered, you always did. Mom. The letter fell from my fingers. Tears ran down my face and hit the floor in thick, quiet drops. For the first time in years, I cried not because I was abandoned, but because I had been loved, flawed, buried, broken but loved. Ashley stared at me as I walked into the living room with the letter. I don't want the house, I said softly. Her eyes widened. What? I'm putting it up for sale. The lake cabin too. I'm keeping Mom's garden bench and that sweater she was knitting. That's all I want. You're walking away from millions? She said, her voice rising again. No, I said, my voice calm. I'm walking away from resentment. The sale closed into months. I donated a portion to the community kitchen my mother used to volunteer at in secret. Another truth I didn't know until I found her receipts. I kept her wedding ring. And the letter. Ashley left town after the house sold. I didn't ask where. We haven't spoken since. But sometimes, I sit on Mom's old bench in my backyard, holding the sweater she never finished. I run my fingers through the loose yarn, and I hear her voice. Not the angry, cold one I grew up with, but the one from the letter. The one full of regret, but also love.